Good morning, Wellhouse. Gary and Melissa O'Brien here, Wellhouse Partners. We're so happy to be with you this morning to share a midweek devotional thought. Before I start, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you how much we miss seeing all of your smiling faces, and we can't wait to one day soon to be back together, worshiping together, and just being able to talk and laugh and share life together. As I said, we've been asked to share a devotional thought this morning, and as we were preparing that, we were talking a lot about, obviously the coronavirus, the pandemic that's going on, and the way it's changed the way we do life, and it's as if we are walking through a wilderness. It's as if we are lost and wandering and confused and unsure and just, a little scared, honestly. In the Bible speaks a lot to that kind of subject. God used wildernesses several times throughout the Bible, and He put His people into wilderness situations in order to, His goal was to draw them near Him. Their response was one of two things. They either did draw near to God, or they turned and ran in fear and cried out and refused and rebelled. I know you've got a story of from the Old Testament to show that.
So when we were discussing this, talking about wilderness, my first thought was the Israelites. Moses was charged with preparing the Israelites to enter into Canaan. They couldn't come right from Egypt and go right into Canaan. God had preparation for them. He wanted them to learn to trust Him, to learn that He would provide for them, to learn things like the Ten Commandments, how they needed to act. So He prepared them. At one point, God tells Moses, He said, okay, I want you to pick one man from each tribe, and I want them to go and kind of check out Canaan, see what it's like. So we all know the story. The 12 went. They were gone for 40 days, and they come back. And 10 of the men are talking about how the cities are fortified, the people are strong, they're big, they make us look like grasshoppers, and we don't need to go. We don't need to go. Well, all of the Israelites, they were so upset, and they said, we need to find a leader that will take us back to Egypt. We just need to go back to Egypt. Moses and Aaron, it says in Numbers 14, that they fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and He'll give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Joshua and Caleb knew God, and they were prepared. They were ready to go. They were ready to go into the promised land. God later talks in that same chapter in Numbers 14. He talks about Caleb, and he said, because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. So we know further in the story that Moses then disobeys God, and his punishment is that he will not be going into the promised land. And so God then appoints Joshua to lead the Israelites in Moses' place. God tells Moses, commission Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, For he will lead this people across and will cause them to inherit the land that you will see. God continued to have Moses prepare Joshua. He told him to encourage him and strengthen him, to prepare him for what was to come, Gary.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good wilderness story. And there's a couple of wilderness stories also in the New Testament, both involving Jesus. In Matthew 4, just before Jesus starts his ministry here on the earth, he goes into the wilderness and he fasts for 40 days. And during that time, I'm sure he also prayed and drew closer to God. But at the 40-day mark, Satan came to him to tempt him. And it says, Satan tempted him with power and all the many trappings of the world, but Jesus rebuked him every time with Scripture. So through fasting, prayer, Scripture, Jesus drew close to God during that time so that he was not tempted by Satan prior to his ministry. Also, in each of the 4 Gospels, there's an account of Jesus and his disciples just before the crucifixion. That night, the night before, he goes with some of the disciples and goes to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. And the accounts, in at least 2 of the accounts, talk about how Jesus is anguished almost to the point of death. And in one of the accounts, it talks about his sweat is like drops of blood. But he's in prayer, he's asking God, he's drawing close to God, and he's also trying to teach the disciples. He goes back to them, are you not still praying? Why aren't you still praying? He encourages them. He tries to build them up, to bring them along, because he knows part of his mission is to bring them along, to continue the ministry after he's gone. Again, that's not necessarily a wilderness story, but I feel Jesus was in a figurative wilderness there in that garden as he struggled with the what was about to come. Melissa?
So, all this to say, we really feel like that God's preparing his church, our church here at Well House in Goodlettsville, for revival. I think there's some exciting times ahead. We've seen our numbers grow online. We've heard about people that are watching that have never stepped foot into our worship service before, and we're really excited about that. So my question to all of you, my question to us, ourselves included, we're asking the same thing. What are we doing to prepare? What are we doing to prepare for this time? To prepare for what's next? In a way, this time is a gift to us. God is giving us this gift. It's a time where we can begin to establish some rhythms that will prepare us for what's next. It's rhythms that we can continue so that we can be like Caleb, because that's what I'd really like to be like. Mm-hmm. I'd like for God to say, oh, she had a different spirit and she followed me wholeheartedly. So I want to establish those rhythms so that I can draw near to God and that I can do the work that he's called for me to do.
Yeah, and so we hope these thoughts today have somehow inspired or encouraged you. Again, we look forward to seeing you again really soon at Well House, and we hope you have a great week.